Ask Ram to.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I apologize again for the delay. I'm here to share my point, which is actually protect the statement that does industry influence treatment modalities. I strongly believe that industry is influencing treatment modalities, and despite my being with them but not a part of them for a prolonged period of times, I am sticking my neck out to say that yes, industry is influencing our practice in every which way. I would like to say that we as orthopedic surgeons are only mango men in this banana republic. Banana Republic is a well-known international multinational brand which sells high-end clothing. Why do I say that? We all have a copy of this called the Hippocratic Oath. Very few of us tend to read it. I hope we all follow it. But do we know who gave us this copy? This copy was provided to us by none other than Pfizer. Do any one of us have an original Hippocratic Oath? Well, if somebody does, I would like to have my copy because I also have a Pfizer copy at home. Let's compare few professions, and this is not the way I think of it, but this is the way the world looks at it. There are three professions where there is some sort of an overlap. TSA agents, for those of us who have not been at the wrong end, facing them in other parts of the world, are people who check you up all around and feel you literally when you pass through security zones, especially the airports in other parts of the world. Doctors we all know of, and the oldest profession in the world we have all heard of. Well, all of us get paid to touch your junk. And yet, this practice has been going on, and they continue to sell service. Well, this is exactly what is happening in our profession. We tend to get sold on products rather than sound scientific practice. The commercial classification of the orthopedic implant progeny today is that we have something we all call the gold standard. We've all used the DHS for the intertrochanteric fracture. We've also done cervical spine surgeries called the anterior cervical decompression fusion. But we have something which is now coming in, which is aspiring to supersede the gold standard. Well, till here it's okay. Next, we have promising implants which promised a lot, but failed to deliver. That's one of the many that we've had. Why does this happen? Because we have a genius scientist, and there are so many of them seated in this room, and we have some, well, I won't take no names if they're in this room, but they are called the financial whiz kids. And this is a marriage of convenience, unfortunately, that we are facing in our own practice. There is some devil's handshake that has happened somewhere, which is leading to an implosive conglomerate, which unfortunately is because the two brains are very dissimilar. This is the brain of the scientist. I'm happy that I'm sitting and standing in front of a man whom I firmly believe is one of those real scientists. And how does that brain work? It works on every aspect, beginning from design to implementation, all the way through to getting a client feedback, that is how the patient feels about the final product. Unfortunately, the businessman's brain is a little bit different. The color is a little bit green, and the pink turns green over a period of time. Why does that happen? Because in the businessman's mind, there's something that is missing. And what is missing is that the patient is the one who needs to be finally satisfied, nobody else. Unfortunately, the final result is a stab in the back, and we don't know who is suffering. I think we are trying to balance money versus ethics. Well, this is a disclosure that the author of this did not receive any financial support, either in full or in part. May I just go back? I think there is something which has gone amiss in this. Yeah. There is a part of this which just moved ahead, which I'm going back on, because this went off directly to the last slide. I really don't know how. Okay, that's it. How did the orthopedic implants begin? Well, a scientist has a dream. This is the man we all respect because he had a dream which saw the light of day and revolutionized orthopedic practice. And then the dreamers became pioneers, and some of them even became legends. But then a part of the dream turned into horror. And there are many stories of horror that we are sharing with you, beginning with the 70s. There was an era of evolution and innovation. Cementless isoelastic hips, Bombali's hip. There was a huge hue and cry. Rob Mathis came out with it, and the whole world started using it. There was a big market hype, but the reality is that the balloon didn't last for too long. It burst. Why? Because poor results came in. But 14 to 17 years later, now it was too long to have waited. Yes, the performance of the prosthesis was unacceptably poor, high debris production and poor primary fixation believed to be the main reason for high failure. Then various articles came in against that. Then came the 80s, where we moved to the next era, which is called the era of the abuse. In this, our wisdom continues to come from our experience, and we believe that the experience comes from a very big learning curve. Each one of us started making our own hips, and everybody said that this is the best way to go. And we started devising and using things which were good in their own way. External fixators were, but then not everywhere. 80s was a time when the haves turned to the have-nots. Implants were being bombarded all over. There were manufacturers shouting from the rooftop. Implants became rosy, very fashionable to use. There was a huge amount of chaos. Every bone was being fixed. And heroism came in, and at times these people were rather stupid the way they went about. But by the time the dust had settled, it was rather too late. There were fixators all around, even going into the spine. I share that because I suffered seeing a few of these. Then India moved into the era of liberalization and reforms. This is where people allowed us to do what we wanted. And this was the best time for the industry. In the 1990s, the impetus came for growth and development. There was relaxation of the import duties and free trade agreements were allowed. The European and the American implant manufacturers jumped at the opportunity, started to spread their wings in India. Many Indian surgeons regularly started visiting these facilities and such corporations abroad, and in hindsight became walking, talking salesmen of products rather than technology. This is unfortunately what happened. It was a war, and this war was between implant failure and bone healing. Then there was a carnage. We had huge amount of data which never got published. And why was that so? Because there was something called corporate-sponsored censorship of literature. And it was not just India, it was worldwide. This is if you just go in and check and click on failed implants in orthopedics, you'll get 1 out of 146. While there are implants in orthopedics where you'll get 3,390 links. Please have an index of suspicion when you look at these, because these comparative analyses need to be analyzed. Then came the final era, which is today, which is the era of sleeves. We have something which is well established. I talk of spine because I do that, which is posterior lumbar interbody fusion. He is the defending champion. But then you create a challenger. You bring lumbar disc arthroplasty. Why do you bring this man in? Initially, you make such a hype about it that everybody says that it's the best way to get around. Then complications start trickling in to an extent where there is a statement where this particular surgery is no more allowed, and that's the last nail in the coffin. These poor results indicate that further use of this implant is not justified. This is in literature. This is the cover-up. Companies didn't stop there. They said, we'll have a case study from the Kellogg's Institute, and they went ahead and checked with Diffuse Spine that they will study this, and that is where it came out that they had fudged the medical data. This is evidence of the fudged medical data where everything was provided which was supposedly to favor the final conclusion, a suit-all conclusion. There was a patient who gave highly positive answers. A physician said neutral. The hospital and the insurance companies were highly negative. Yet, they managed to pass it all. Look at the recent past. Metal-on-metal arthroplasty. This is something where we've seen these lying all around. Very few in India have cried loud for this, but internationally it has not been accepted. As a series of failures, device regulation is needed and will have to be done. Complications, there's a high rate of wear, there's loosening, there's metal ion, genotoxicity. Look at just the fine print. As competition grew, the boundaries were pushed and regulators were no match against the commercial pressure. Carefully crafted surgical innovations fell into the hands of powerful multinationals. Shareholder interest trumped patient safety. This is all available. What is the modus operandi? They work basically in 4 ways. What happened, sir? I'm loving it, but nothing is happening. Can you just check? They're just last 2-3 slides.
Industry is sabotaging his presentation.
I just thought as much. I just thought as much.
Most likely. Banana republic.
ऐसा ही लग रहा है सर. यहीं से कहीं से भी शुरू कर दो सर. यहाँ से शुरू कर दो ऊपर से. Connect it. We have to trust the evidence, and the evidence says that there is a conflict of interest that exists between surgical research and it is being sponsored, and it's a genuine concern. How do you convince key opinion leaders? Well, there are so-called company-sponsored, branded para-company activities under the name of teaching, which are going on. And these are implant vendors and hospitals. They are competing influences over the product of choice for the orthopedic surgeon. How do you create mass hysteria? There's a relationship between commercial support and bias towards CME activities. They are creating advertising and creating a bias. There's a propagation of navigation surgery. Why only navigation? Now they've gone ahead to make custom fit knees. This is, isn't it? Tomorrow they'll have to choose your hip depending on whether you have a wide, medium or a skinny. Well, it all depends. You can choose the one of your own size. What is the road ahead? It's very gloomy and dusty. This is the way that I was when I was driving to Agra this morning. The whole scenario rewrites the relationship between you and the service provider. Today, we need to teach our peers who still listen to us and our trainees, not just scientific knowledge and operative techniques, but ethics. Please teach them to dissociate at the first opportunity they get. They should try and gain the ever-depleting trust of patients, which is happening in our own country today. Raise a voice, either as an association or as an individual or as a group, against the unjust, corrupt practices jeopardizing patient care. Or else, their blood shall be in our hands very, very soon. And we shall be destined to exist as mango men. Mango men, aam aadmi, is duniya mein. In a banana republic. I thank you very much for a patient hearing. This is my disclosure which I made that I have not received any financial support, either full or in part, either in cash, kind or other modus of gratification, official or unofficial, ethical or unethical, during the making of this presentation. Thank you very much.
You look sorry for this last slide, huh? Very good. But whatever is the rule, I think ultimately it depends upon the individual surgeon and the individual company, because there are all rules are carefully crafted to leave small loopholes in that. And the hospitals, everything. I mean, when I say doctors. Yes, sir, please. Which Ravi, sir?
There are corrupt practices, we should be leaving the hospital.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a mic?
No, we can hear.
You are loud enough. Ravi, you will remember that we had a symposium on does the implant industry drive orthopedics at the Jaipur conference. You were there. What he has said about Shushruth and now Smith Mason taking over Edlow may be largely true. I trust it is largely true. But my question is, how many implant manufacturers are there in India? How many are there?
You want a response?
Yeah.
Number. I have a carefully collected list which is names and addresses, which totals to about 260 or so. my guess is that it's probably over 400.
So 400 implant manufacturers. There is just one Shushruth which follows an ethical approach. That is what is the essence of the problem, that we have a lot of disclosures and we have a lot of conflict of interest disclosures. The point is that there are so many who are unrecorded, who are playing from the background. These are the ones who are really pushing things the way they shouldn't be pushed. What you said is they are the responsible for the dark side. How do we weed them out?
If you want me to respond, and I will respond as an individual, it's highly disturbing. As an individual, it is disturbing. And it is reflective of the malaise in society at large, which is about erosion of values. And for those of us who are little old school, we think of ourselves as old-fashioned. And I don't mind sharing with you, and I will say this, again, take it as a personal statement, okay? I'm not, these are personal views. I was at some meeting involving a trade surgeon industry meeting for the organization of some conference. And the interactions at that meeting that I saw, which involved industry interacting with organizers and actively discussing ways of overcoming MCI guidelines, and actively discussing, it was a very open discussion about, yes, MCI guideline ये बोलता है, लेकिन आप इसको इस तरीके से करो. Surgeons were advising, and there were pharma companies who are the big spenders who are also having very strong ideas on this, कि हाँ हाँ वो guideline तो ये बोलता है कि direct payment नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन आप इस तरीके से इसको route करो. And this collusion was going on at a very, very high level. I don't mind telling you, you all know that Dr. Ajay Puri, Dr. Sudhir Warrior are very close friends of mine. And that evening we were together going back to the hotel. And I told the two of them, boss, the three of us at this moment are on the wrong planet. If this is the way the world is going, there is no place for us. And it's very all-pervasive. आप लोग इसको कहाँ से stop करोगे? Unless it's a very, very firm hand. Organization has to develop some teeth. And because as they say, if you don't control from within, tomorrow external controls will come. What has happened in the US? Department of Justice has become so intrusive now that life has become hell. They had their first attack was industry. And you all know the fines industry have paid. Nobody says that there are bad sections everywhere. It is a fact that all that money has been a corrupting influence. So बहुत कुछ हुआ है. And it is a fact that Department of Justice for the last 5 years had 20 lawyers paid by the companies sitting within the companies in their offices, apart from the $400-500 million fines which these big companies have paid. But that was phase 1. Phase 2, and that Attorney General or whoever is the head of Department of Justice has gone on record, and I think it's in your 2012 AOS debate, and it's a symposium, it's in JBJS, where he has gone on record saying that now the last 5 years, we are confident that industry has adopted the right practices. Nothing is perfect, but at least systems are in place. Now as the next level, they are going after individual surgeons in the US.
Just
So
one point I would like to make.
As an association, sorry, one more sentence. Internally as an association, some very strong guidelines. And of course, it will be the same issue. You can't go to the last level and control, but at least some statements of intent. Something has to go out very powerfully from the President's office, from the body as a whole. Maybe you bring this kind of discussions out into the main conference hall, not in these small forums. You bring it into the main conference hall where there are 500-800,000 people who at least begin to listen to these subjects, which are of great importance, and maybe it's a small step towards bringing change.
I'm just making a small parallelism. There are 20 or 22 odd drug manufacturing companies in India, who manufacture bulk manufacturers. The rest of the 400 or 400 plus companies are buying from these bulk manufacturers, and they are bottling them or packaging them and then selling them under their trade names. And every day you find that another 10, 20 companies are coming up who are new companies marketing some newer products. And they are making a profit. How are they making a profit?
Is there a question?
No, I'm just saying that I am quite aware of the financial implications and how this marketing strategy goes. The same thing is happening here in the industry, in the implant industry.
Can I have a
new implant manufacturer comes out.
Are you as a body or as a body worried about how they're making a profit? I'm slightly worried by something much more prevalent, which is parallel to the greater number of black label bottles sold in India than manufactured by companies. What I'm trying to say is that there are more implants available, supposedly approved, than were actually ever approved by anybody. And this is talking about drugs.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That's the fear, which hurts, which I'm most worried about.
This is one of their marketing
I
strategies.
still want to know, there was one company once, which I think you were the company which I once argued with, and they told us that every screw of ours, particular screw of ours, not just the entire batch, but every screw has an identification number on it, which I think makes a lot of sense to me rather than the entire batch. Because you could say a batch was 1,000, you could say a batch was 10,000. So if we have something by which we can identify that, I think it's going to make matters.
I think it is not only here. The problem is here in general in the national mileage, where we are making rules but not being able to implement. Be it maybe drug standardization, be it maybe implant standardization, and that's how the corrupt practices start. So unless, I'm sure we should not be pessimistic. But if you are talking today, and I'm sure tomorrow something will come, and maybe day after something will be implemented and enforced. Maybe Dr. Raza wants to say.
Ram, when you talk right, it's a matter of ethics and it's a matter of individual listings. I personally believe that teachers, as senior teachers, people who are in the medical college, have to be acting as role models. You know, at somewhere we have to catch the boys young, postgraduates and all that, and we have to be inculcating proper ethical practices into them. And we can't inculcate if we just go on preaching something and practicing something else. So I think as a body, and now Dr. Anil Jain is going to take over, the President, I would request him, that at least get the teachers on board. And that's where, you know, we can start to develop ethical practices. That's one thing we can do and straight away take off and at least teach them, because a lot of times, you know, I'm taking an undergraduate class, 15 minutes into the lecture I suddenly stop, and then the rest of the lecture is only on medical ethics, nothing else.
So that is Howard Ann's article, which I just mentioned. In fact, I'll give you a copy of what I worked pretty hard on this since the time that he told you. Is that Howard Ann's article is worth reading, that entire article, as to how you have to, besides teaching clinical practice and surgical technique, you have to teach them ethics.
The question, Dr. Raza, what you are saying is very clear. How many of the teachers and women are following their ethics? And then what they will teach?
That's the problem.
That is why I am very
I think we have to break the vicious cycle somewhere. Some way we have to break the vicious cycle. Friends, we had a very interactive this 1.5 hours, and we really, every one of us, I'm sure, must have enjoyed it. And I'm sure maybe just today 20 people are thinking, maybe tomorrow 100 people, and I am a firm believer that every change, big change, start from a very small change. Thank you very much indeed for your presence and your participation. Thank you, Ravi, and thank you, Ram.
Lovely time.
I'm taking your photo.
Thank you, sir.
shaking
How are you? And this will be
Around India, near Delhi, I remember.
Delhi, all big corporate offices, they are like this.
This should have found a